Hi guys, good afternoon. So I'm gonna continue the second day of the class. Today we are mainly focused on the finishing and apple yuzu tart, brownies, also Paris Brest. Okay, but we are going to finish yesterday the cake that we done, and we are going to do all the finishing. So before we start, okay, for the product of today, I want to know any question that you want to know regarding to yesterday's class. Okay guys, if the recipe I state down NH pectin, right, you have to use NH pectin. It's not interchangeable with yellow pectin or other pectin because the pectin reaction will be different, and also the amount we have to use will be different. And most important, for making a French pastry or a cakes, right, we have to use NH pectin because it's reversible, which means when we put it inside the hot area or when we warm it up, it's going to melt. When you eat it, our mouth is slightly warmer, so when we are going to melt the pectin, so when you eat a jelly, right, it's going to melt easier. But if you are using yellow pectin, right, it doesn't work like that because yellow pectin is not reversible, so they are not going to melt when you put inside something slightly warmer area. Okay?
The amount of milk needed to make the coconut infusion was not needed, and it is not in the recipe for the coconut chantilly.
The amount of
Milk needed to make the coconut infusion.
I didn't use milk. Guys, for coconut chantilly, I didn't use milk. It's cream or coconut milk. I didn't use fresh milk for it. It's for which 6. Okay, so coconut chantilly, there's no milk. In the procedure, in the recipe, there's no milk. So, of course, there's no milk. Okay, please go through the recipe properly. Thank you. Maybe I mentioned about coconut milk to replace coconut puree if you don't want to use puree, but I'm not saying milk. Okay.
The quantity of streusel is not mentioned.
The quantity of streusel is not mentioned. It's the full recipe of streusel. After bake, I'm going to use all of the streusel inside that recipe, so don't need to mention.
The recipe says coconut milk.
For which one?
For the coconut chantilly, I think they are saying that because the coconut chantilly is coconut puree.
Okay. I think it's like this. Like I mentioned, the method, right? Write down coconut milk and coconut cream. This one I don't use anymore. I use coconut puree. I mentioned during when I make the chantilly. Okay, I mentioned when I explained to you in the procedure, you see there's the coconut milk and cream, right? That is the coconut puree. No more using coconut milk and coconut cream. I mentioned it because if you are not using the coconut puree, you can replace it with either coconut milk or either coconut cream. And yesterday I mentioned also why I use puree, because it's lighter and more refreshing. But the cost is slightly higher. But if you want to change, you can change. Don't misunderstand. Okay.
If you want to use the gelatin sheet, how much water should we soak with?
Like I explained, for the gelatin sheet or gelatin powder, you have to first understand what is gelatin in gold, silver or bronze. After you understand, then you know how much water you are going to put. Okay.
How many hand blender will get the bubbles, right? I'm looking for a hand blender with no bubbles.
All the hand blender, if you use properly, it won't give bubble. It's just when you are not using properly, then they will have bubble. But Bamix is easier to use because the speed is slower, so it's not going to create bubble so easily. If your hand blender is very fast, the speed is going to create the bubble easier. Okay, so if there's no question for yesterday, now I'm going to continue what we are going to make today. The first recipe, right, it will be the Paris Brest. So chocolate Paris Brest, page 16. We are going to start with a choux. For the choux pastry, right, before we start, we have to prepare the croqueline first. For a croqueline, right, it's very straightforward, so I prepare and roll it in. So I explain you how to prepare the croqueline. Basically, cream the butter and the brown sugar until it's light. when the color turns slightly lighter, then you add in the flour, mix well, and roll it to 2mm. Then keep inside the freezer. Okay, now already done it, I keep inside the freezer. So now I'm going to start to do the choux pastry. For the choux pastry, very straightforward, but there are certain things quite important. Before we start to do it, try to put everything in room temperature, especially the eggs. If your egg is very cold, right, you double boil it to make sure it's in room temperature. So after we done the choux pastry, it's better or easier for us to judge the texture. Okay? Then over here, I have milk, water, butter, sugar and salt, all inside the pot. Then in the recipe, right, there's another warm water, right, is for us to adjust in the end. So this one you don't put first, keep it separate. Because after we cook the choux, right, sometimes if the flour you are using, or if you are cooking too much, is too dry, then we have to add extra water inside. So first, I'm going to melt everything. And make sure we sieve the flour. All-purpose flour, okay, or T55. In Malaysia, we use rose flour as cake flour and sometimes as all-purpose flour because it's in between cake flour and all-purpose flour, so I can use. But if you want to be safe, right, it's better to use all-purpose flour. Don't use cake flour which is too fine. Otherwise, right, when we mix, the gluten is not developed enough. So right now my eggs is in room temperature. And make sure we sieve the flour. For the choux, right, the idea we have to cook the flour is very important because the reason we cook the flour, right, it will absorb more liquid into the mixture itself. So when the flour absorbs more liquid, right, it develops more gluten. And also when it's inside the oven, right, the liquid from the dough is going to expand and it becomes steam inside the oven. So it will push the dough to become a bun. If today you are using the flour which is too less gluten or you are not cooking enough, they cannot absorb as much liquid. So when you put inside the oven, right, first thing, the mixture is going to be too runny. So second thing, you cannot pipe, and when you put inside the oven, right, because it cannot absorb so much liquid, they are not going to have steam, and when the gluten is not enough, right, there's nothing to hold the steam. So they are not going to raise up. So sometimes, right, you see with the same recipe, you do, it can grow nicely. Sometimes when you do the same recipe, it doesn't grow nicely. One thing is maybe you are not cooked nicely for your flour. That is the first point. Second point is the oven, when you bake the choux in the middle, you cannot open the oven because you need to trap the steam inside to make sure the steam can hold the shape of the choux bun. If you haven't set right, you open the oven, the steam go, the choux bun is going to drop. Okay? So first I have to boil the mixture properly to make sure it's hot enough. And my flour is already sifted. So make sure you bring to a full boil. So like this, right, I make sure my liquid is hot enough. Then I turn to a lowest heat and put the flour inside and stir properly. At this moment, right, I still leave the heat on, but just with a very low heat to help to cook the flour a little bit more. And we have to cook for a while to make sure there is a skin forming at the bottom of the pot, which means like this way, right, we cook the mixture enough. I can't really tell you how long we have to cook because with the different amount, right, you have to cook different time. And with different kind of the pots also will be slightly different. Okay, this is good enough. So make sure there's no lumps of the flour. So as you can see, so I have some skin already forms at the bottom. Just a little bit, don't need to have a lot. And now I'm gonna start to use paddle to beat it. As you can see right now, there's a lot of steam coming up because it's very hot. So we have to let it cool down a bit. Because if right now we add the eggs, right, we are going to cook the eggs. So we have to make sure it cool down. When there's no steam comes out, we can start to add in the eggs. Until now, any question, Azhar? Streusel, okay? Okay, guys, streusel, I didn't put the amount because all the streusel after you make, right, after you bake, is for that recipe. Is the step of making the streusel? They don't understand the streusel, is don't understand the method or what? Ah, because I didn't put the procedure. Oh, sorry guys. For the streusel, I didn't put the procedure. I forgot because I thought I already put. I think it's when I copy paste, it removed. So you check page 7. For the streusel, I explained you how to do it, but it's very simple. So you pay attention to the streusel, the bottom part: butter, brown sugar, hazelnut powder, rose flour, and salt. Basically, put everything inside and use paddle to beat. It will become a crumble. So after you get a crumble, you bake inside the oven. Okay, 160 degrees for around 18 to 20 minutes. Okay, after you take it out, let it cool down to room temperature. So now on top, for the filleting part, we put almond duja, cocoa butter melted, white chocolate together, we mix. Okay, and pour over the streusel with sea salt. We use paddle to mix. Yesterday I showed you how to do it. Okay, mix well, then we add in the filleting. Mix again to make sure we mix well. That's all. Simple as that. Don't make it too complicated. And the method is actually same with previous almond croissant. The only difference is almond croissant we use all filleting. For this one, almond streusel base, I use filleting and streusel base. Okay. Do you understand? Are you understand? So right now, there's not much steam coming out from the shoe. I'm going to add the egg slowly. Make sure we add it part by part. If you add one time everything, right, it's very difficult for the mixture to absorb all the eggs. Because if you have two different texture, right, one liquid, one doughy, try to bring the texture closer so they mix easier. If you put everything one time, you see they're floating, very difficult to mix. And ideally, right, after we finish the choux pastry, the mixture is supposed to feel slightly warm. The temperature will be around 30 degrees, so we can check the texture easily. If your mixture is cold, right, let's say example by 20 degrees, if you are using the cold egg or whatever, you cannot check the texture because when it's colder, right, the fat inside will set, they will become thicker. So make sure most important part, and a lot of people are missed out, is the mixture after we done, right, have to be slightly warm so they emulsify properly. So I'm gonna warm up the water a little bit. Like I say, because I want to make sure my shoe is warm, not going to cool down, so I use a warm water instead of a cold water. So now I show you the texture of the shoe. So as you can see right now, for the cream puff, right, you see when it drop, it's cracking a little bit on the when it's dropped. This is a texture slightly too dry or too firm, and the temperature of the dough still warm, which means now I have a little bit less liquid. It can be when I cook too much. It can be the flour that I'm using. Okay, so I put 50 grams of water over here, help to adjust, but don't put everything because every time we cook, right, might have a little bit different. Because the induction cooker will be different, the pot will be different, or the cooking time will be different. So just put a little bit of the liquid. It can help to make it smoother. Basically, we want to have a texture almost like a pastry cream. And if you will see, if you are having the recipe, amount is different with what I'm making. The texture after you cook, right, will be slightly different again, because if you do big amounts, right, you have to cook longer, but you cannot estimate how long you cook. So it's always better to learn how to judge. Alright, this should be fine. So guys, you see, when you drop, there's no cracking, it becomes sharp. But make sure it's not too watery. Yeah? For doing a shoe bun or cream puff, we want it to be round and it puff up. We don't want it to be too liquid. If it's doing eclair, then we have to pipe and don't want it to crack too much, right? I'm going to put a little bit more water inside to make it more runny. But for cream puff, this is the good texture that we are going to use. I would say there's no shortcut how to learn how to judge the texture. You have to try and make sure you know the texture of it and make sure the temperature is warm. That is a trick that I can give you. Because when I learned how to do the shoe, right, also I have a problem because in the beginning I don't know that the mixture have to judge when it's still warm. If you check the texture when it's cold, right, you will see even though you put all the water, right, they are still remain very firm or cracking a little bit because the fat is setting. So now I'm gonna transfer into the piping bag. Make sure when we put inside, right, we don't trap air. Put it properly. Usually this recipe, right, you can get 6 to 8 of the Paris breads that I'm going to pipe. So with the Paris breads, right, over here I have the stencil that I draw with the design. So I can follow it. So when we pipe, right, it just touch a little bit or have a small gap, just very less gap, no problem, because when it goes inside oven, it's going to expand. They are going to stick together. So I'm gonna pipe 3 for the class to save time. Then we can remove this. It's better to remove the paper so the seal pen is directly touching the tray, so it will bake properly. Can you pass me the crockery? And now I'm gonna pipe for a small one. And guys, for a small one, I prefer to use a seal pan. If I don't need stencil, I prefer to use seal pan because it can puff up nicer, or perforated mag because the air circulation is better for the bottom part. So for a small one, we just need very small. Okay, to save time, I'm not going to pipe everything. And over here, I have the crockery that I prepared earlier. So make sure we keep inside the freezer, then it will set properly. Sometimes you see when you work right, it's too soft. When you cut, it sticks to the paper because it still remains too soft. So it's not possible to take out. You just have to put inside the freezer bag, then it's possible to cut again. So cut to the size of the cream puff. Just make sure we place on the middle. Then after that, just put the icing sugar on top. This will help the shoe after when we bake right, it cracks nicer, more even. If you don't put icing sugar, it works sometimes when it grows right, the crockery crack right, not cracking so nice, not that even. Okay, so for the small one, we have to use a small cutter. Just can you help me to cut this one, the small one? Okay. So I'll pass to the assistant. He will help me to cut. Cut over there. Use this one. So for baking the shoe right, I prefer after done, bake straight away. Don't keep too long. If you want to keep right, you can keep around half hours inside the chiller before we bake. Because the longer we keep right, the shoe are going to grow a bit lesser. The earlier we bake, you are going to get a full expanding of the shoe itself. The volume is going to be better and more round. So when bake, I'm going to bake around 200 degrees for 5 to 6 minutes. Then reduce the temperature to 180, continue bake for around 25 minutes. Then on that time we check whether the shoe is dry enough. If it's not not dry enough, we are going to bake for another 5 to 10 minutes again. So the reason in the beginning we use high heat is to make sure when we open the oven, right, we put the shoe inside, the heat inside the oven still remain very hot. That's why we want to use the high heat 200 degrees to push it up. Okay? Then reduce the heat is to make sure it bakes nicely without over caramelize it. And for the small shoe, we reduce 20 degrees. Start by 180, reduce to 160. That's it. And the baking time for the small shoe are going to be shorter. Usually for the small shoe, like the size I pipe, right, it will take around 15 to 18 minutes to bake. Okay, it's not too long. For the big one like this, it will take around 30 to 40 minutes to bake. You have to check your oven, and also the size you pipe have to be exactly same like mine, or if you pipe a little bit bigger, you have to use a bit longer time. A little bit smaller, you have to be shorter time. That's it. So are there any questions regarding the shoe? You repeat the question they have. Temperature lower. I don't really understand this question, so we skip to the next question. Guys, when you ask question, right, make sure you type everything, because we are not directly answer on that time, so I don't know which part you are mentioned sometimes.
Okay. What number of nozzle are you using for the shoe bake part?
It depends on the size you are going to pipe. Now the big one I use 805. Small one I use 12. Small is 12, big is 805.
Using mold to make the shoe will be consistent?
Yes, if you are using mold to make the shoe, right, it's quite consistent. You can pipe the shoe inside the mold and freeze it like a dome shape. Then after that, you put a crust, you bake it. But that will take longer time. So if you are not confident to get exactly same all the time, you can use the mold. Just you have to freeze it nicely and unmold it. Usually it takes quite some time.
Do you bake it with a fan mold?
Sorry?
Do you bake it with a fan mold?
Yes, I bake it with a fan mode. In these 2 days, the recipe I have, right, all is baked with a fan mode, because the convection oven I have, right, I cannot stop the fan.
Okay. If the shoe mixture temperature is 20 Celsius, what is the best temperature to put the eggs for the shoe dough?
Don't do it on 20 degrees. In the very beginning, you have to make sure you cook properly, and also you warm the egg properly in the room. Everything in room temperature, no problem. Then when you cook the eggs, right, when you cook the shoe mixture, it's going to be hot. After you cool it down, without the steam, it's around 50 degrees. When you add the eggs, right, it will be 30 degrees plus. I don't know. Just make sure you don't use a cold egg, then no problem.
Is the eggs used for rising agent? Is there any product you can use for rising shoe? I'm sure the texture will not be the same.
No, egg is not using to raise the shoe. Egg is to provide the structure for the shoe. If you take out the eggs, there is no structure, because nothing to bind them. Only the water to bind. It won't work. The reason it will raise up is because of, one is gluten, which from the flour. Second, from the egg also, because you have a structure to hold it. And the most important is the steam during baking. Okay.
After freezing the shoe in the shake
Last
mold,
question.
the shoe needs to be defrosted before baking.
After one more time. Sorry.
After freezing the shoe in the shake mold, the shoe needs to be defrosted before baking.
I would say don't need totally defrost, but usually I leave it outside for around half hours before I bake it. So guys, for the shoe is done. Now we are going to go for the because I have to wait for the shoe to bake. Okay, I got prepared earlier, but we use it later. So we skip the Paris bread first. Let's go for the next recipe. Page 3. Page 3 for the brownies. So now we are going to do a cheese brownies. I like this recipe because there's already inside the brownie have the cream cheese. It's not going to feel super sweet, but we can on the same time get the texture of brownie, which is a little bit sticky. So first I put butter and the cream cheese inside the mixing bowl, brown sugar as well, salt on the same time. So basically, right, we just leave cocoa powder and flour outside, and eggs also. I put the vanilla essence inside the eggs, so easier, I save time. So now we have to cream until it's light. Again, the same thing. For this recipe, it's better to keep everything in the room temperature. So we want to mix the eggs into the cream cheese and butter, right? It's going to be easier to mix. Right now, my cream cheese and butter a little bit cold. So what I do normally, while creaming, right, I'm going to warm it up a little bit by the torch. Because if the mixture is too cold, right, the moment we put the eggs, right, you will see it start to split. Because when it's too cold, the butter and cream cheese, they are fat. They cannot combine with the liquid. So, but if the temperature is in room temperature, right, they can combine better because the butter is soft, it's creamy. Still a little bit cold. And guys, one more information. Ideally, when we mention room temperature, it refers to around 24 degrees. Not in the room. Let's remember, if you are in Malaysia, room temperature is not 32 degrees. Understand? Room temperature is the overall temperature for the world. We mentioned inside the books is around 24 to 28 degrees. Not super hot. Otherwise, your butter is going to melt. Alright, for this one, right, we don't need to cream until super fluffy because I just want it to be slightly lighter. It's a brownie, I don't need to be super airy. So I don't suggest to cream until too light. Otherwise, when we eat, right, it's more like a sponge instead of a brownies. So right now, I'm going to add the eggs slowly. And again, same way, when we do creaming method, right, we have to make sure we add the eggs. Don't add everything one time. Otherwise, it's very difficult to combine. So guys, after when you put all the eggs inside, right, if you see the mixture is splitting, which means they are slightly cold, then you can use the torch to heat again. To melt the side and make sure the temperature slightly warmer. but don't heat too much. Otherwise, the butter that you cream until it's airy, they are going to collapse. Then you don't have the air anymore. Now it mix well. There's no splitting. A bit more. It's still very cold. Alright. Then I'm going to add in the flour sieved together with a baking powder. Sorry. The flour sieved together with a baking powder and cocoa powder. Guys, for this recipe, it's better to use a cake flour. You can use T45. So when you eat right, if it's cake flour, when you eat, they are going to melt faster in your mouth. Don't use all-purpose flour for this, okay? Again, same, like I'm working in Malaysia, I have a roast flour. It's in between the cake flour, very fine, and all-purpose, so I can use it, no problem. So now, before we add in the powder, we make sure we sieve everything together and use a low speed to mix it well. Mix it nicely. Then if there's any powder haven't mixed well, we just scrape and use a spatula to mix a little bit. Always remember to mix a little bit before we transfer to a piping bag, so the mixture is going to mix well nicely. And for the for the walnut, right, toast it with 160 degrees for around 25 minutes. So we have toasted walnuts. Like this way, right, when you eat, right, you get the taste better. Alright. So I have a travel cake mold, and over here I put the, so you see, I put a parchment paper inside, I cut like this way, and stick it inside by spraying the oil inside the mold. So in this case, right, later after bake, it's easier for me to remove. So I have to pipe around 400 grams for this mold. The size of the mold is around 25 centimeter with around around 6 centimeter wide, and the height of it is around 6 to 7 centimeter. It's not a must for you all to follow my mold, you can change. So pipe a thin layer first. Then we can put the nuts inside. So like this way, right, we can have the nuts in every bite. Okay, so around like this, 70% of the mold. We don't need to smooth it out, no worries, because after bake, it's going to become a little bit flat. And if you want, right, we can again put a little bit more nuts on top. So we can eat more nuts, the texture is going to be better. Are there any question while waiting for this?
The dimension of the teeth is 6 cm, 25 cm, and 6 to 30 cm, right?
Yep. Alright. So after done, right, I'm going to bake inside the oven 160 degrees for around 20 minutes. For this one, it's a little bit difficult for you to check by using the stick because I want the brownies to be sticky. So when you check by stick, right, it will be slightly sticky. The stick is not going to be clean. If it's clean, right, then it will be more like a sponge. So 20 minutes, once it's done, you can take it out. You can try first for the first round. If you feel it's too dry or too much like a sponge, next time when you bake, you reduce the baking time. Basically, I want it to be like a little bit more sticky, creamy, instead of baking fully done like a sponge. The inner part is supposed to be very sticky. And guys, for the leftover of the brownie, right, I'm going to spread to 1 centimeter thickness and put the nuts around like a sponge, okay? Then again, I'm gonna bake inside the oven with 160 degrees for around 8 to 10 minutes only. That we are going to use for the Paris bread later. So later I will show you, it's the same recipe I use for the chocolate Paris bread. So the next recipe, right, I'm going to do, you turn to the next page. We have caramelized walnuts, crystallized walnuts. So for this one, because I want to have some flavor inside, so I don't cook until caramelized. I just cook to, you can write down over there, temperature will be 145 degrees. So first, I'm gonna put water and sugar to cook this to 145 degrees. So they are not going to have caramel taste, neutral taste. Later, I'm going to put the toasted walnuts inside to mix until it crystallizes. So you have walnuts, but outside it cooked with thin layers of sugar to give some texture. And once I mix well, I'm going to put the butter and the orange zest to give a flavor. So I'm going to prepare the zest. Okay. So now I'm gonna cook the syrup to 145 degrees Celsius. Guys, it's very important that all the tools like thermometer, these kind of things, right? We need to have inside when we want to make pastry, because the temperature decides the texture we are going to get. If you don't use if you don't use thermometer, right, you will see the product you do, right, will be a bit different. So right now 145 degrees, directly put in orange zest and butter. Reduce the heat to lowest and mix in the walnuts, basically all together at the same time. Use a low heat, continue to cook it, crystallize it. So the syrup will have the buttery and orange taste. I still on the heat, but use the lowest heat. So it's not going to set too fast, it's going to set slowly. So continue stir until it crystallizes. So you see each of the walnuts, right, outside have a thin layer of crystal, give some texture and also giving the flavor of the orange. Alright. So after done, as you can see here, we have the walnut with crystal outside. So this way, after it cool down, we eat, there's extra crunch and also a lot of flavor inside. This one I'm going to pour it out and leave it on the parchment paper or tray to cool it down. Later we are going to use for piping the ganache and stick this together. So the next one, right, I'm going, to make the class faster, right, I already prepared the brownie, which is baked already. So I'm going to take it out. So now, for the ganache, due to the time I pre-prepared, so I just going to explain you the method of doing it. It's very straightforward. First, pastry for the ganache. We warm up the milk and cream. Once it's boiled, stop cooking and pour over the chocolates. Mix well until the chocolate fully melted. Add in the butter. We don't need to take care of the temperature, no worries for this. After we put in the butter, right, we emulsify, blend nicely, and leave it 8 hours inside the chiller. Then, when it starts to set a little bit piping consistency, we can take it out and pipe. The most important part is when the ganache is done and start to set. Don't mix it anymore. The more you mix, right, it's going to split. Because ganache is a combination of chocolates which have cocoa butter inside and liquid. So when they set, right, means the cocoa butter sets. And this time they bind together with a liquid. But when you stir it, when you move around, right, they are going to slowly separate. Okay, if you don't move it, they hold. If you move it, they separate. Then you will see your ganache splitting. So over here, I have the brownie that I baked earlier. And I keep inside the chiller or freezer. If you want to be fast, you put inside the freezer. Otherwise, you can keep inside the chiller. So it's set and it's firmer. It's not going to break easily. Then over here, I have the ganache. I put inside the nozzle 805, exactly same with what we have earlier for the shoe. So just pipe the layers on top. Then after, I put the crystallized walnuts on top. So more texture. Later, we are going to glaze it with the gourmet glaze or chocolate coating. Then, important, we have to make sure the side is not acid from the cake itself. We have to clean a little bit. Otherwise, right, when we want to glaze it right later, it's going to stuck at the top without glazing a side. So now I'm going to wrap it and keep inside the chiller. Always remember, for the travel cake, if you want to glaze with the gourmet glaze or the chocolate coating, right? Because we are going to pour the chocolate coating tempered. So make sure the cake is not too cold. Chiller temperature is fine or room temperature. But because I want to set my ganache properly, I will put inside the chiller for a while to let it set properly. Then later I can glaze with a gourmet glaze. Don't keep inside the freezer, it's too cold. Otherwise, when you glaze the gourmet glaze, right, they will set too much. Later, you have a thick layer of coating. So now I'm gonna wrap it. Then we can shape a little bit to make sure it's smoother on the top. Alright, so you see like this wrap, right? We are going to get a smooth edges, not so sharp. And now keep inside the chiller. Let it set properly, later we can glaze it. Alright, any question regarding the brownies? For the taste, yeah, if myself, I don't like to eat something which is too sweet. For brownie, right, the only problem for brownie usually, especially for Malaysian, is too sweet. You need to have that amount of sugar to make sure you get the texture of the brownies. Sticky and a little bit creamy. So if you take out the sugar, they don't get the same texture. So by adding a little bit of cream cheese inside, right, it gives you the flavor which is better, and also you don't feel so sweet. And it opens our appetite to make it lighter, so when we eat, right, you don't feel it's too heavy on sweetness and only chocolates.
Is the butter soft or cold butter?
Soft. For ganache, no problem. Soft butter, cold butter, because like I mentioned, you don't need to take care of temperature because we are going any of the way we are going to chill it after for the ganache. It's not like when we do the chocolate bonbon, we are not going to chill it. So for this one, you don't need to worry about temperature of butter. Just make sure in the end, you blend everything nicely.
If the ganache is split, is there any way to save it?
If the ganache is split, you double boil or microwave to make sure the temperature of ganache goes back to around 30, you blend again. You have to make sure you blend nicely, emulsify, then you keep inside the chiller, repeat the step again.
Just said that if glaze travel cake should not be too cold. How about if glaze the entremet or petit gâteau?
If you glaze entremet and petit gâteau by using chocolate coating, you have to use frozen cake, but you have to work super fast. That's why for the chocolate coating like this, not glaze, gourmet glaze, it's chocolate and oil, we use dip instead of glazing for entremet. Okay?
Can we use compound chocolate?
But you can use compound chocolate if you like, no worries. Just the taste won't be as good. The sweet pastry, I'm going to show them how to. 这个底下，这个不要这样。sweet pastry 我要 show 他们 line 在下面。What else are there? Oh, done. Okay. So guys, turn your page to the apple yuzu cake. Let me see which page. Page 11. So we have almond sablé dough. Yesterday I explained you how we are going to do it. So after done right, we roll it to 2 millimeter, like this. 2 millimeter is important. The method of making it is very straightforward. It's a rub-in method. You put all the dry ingredients together, then you put the cut butter, cold butter. You mix until it's sandy, then you add in the eggs. So mix, continue, it becomes like a dough like this. It's a sweet pastry. Then to line the tarts, I cut it with around 2.5 centimeter. Usually if I want to work fast, I do this way. So you line the side first. So like this way is faster when we line the tarts. Of course, you can do the classic way to line, no problem. There's no much difference. So, important part, after you line the tarts right, like this way, you see there's a hole right. Make sure the dough is not too cold. In the chiller is fine, or you take out for a while to let it rest. It's not too cold already. And after you line the side, you press like this way to cut, so you get a clean side. And the top, you cut it out. The reason, right, I mentioned have to keep it in the not too cold, because if it's too cold when you press like this, right, after bake you get the line over here, which is not too good. If it's not too cold, right, when you press like this, you don't see the line too obvious. And after bake, when you put the egg wash, right, it's going to cover the line. So no worries. Then trim off the excess. Like this way, right, we can line the tart easier. And especially if your room is slightly warm, right, you can do it easier. Okay? So due to the time, I pre-prepared this one. I explain you how I do. After we done all this, right, let's say example you done 10. Keep in the chiller to let it rest properly. Then you put the baking rice inside while baking. Then we pre-bake it. Pre-bake around 15 minutes when the color is light. Okay? Then we finish with the almond cream. Pipe the almond cream half inside the ring and continue to bake for another 10 minutes. So totally, right, we bake the tart shell around 20 to 25 minutes, but almond cream we bake around 10 minutes. So we get the crust crispy, inside is spongy. Alright, so I'm going to show you. Because that one will take long time to prepare. So after done, right, as you can see over here, after we bake the shell, pre-bake, then we buy the almond cream, continue bake. So we have a crispy and also spongy inside, which is almond cream. So after After we are done with the baking like this way, let it cool down. And guys, if you want to apply egg wash, to make it shining, you can. After bake already like this, you take 4, let's say example, 4 times of egg yolk and 1 times of cream to make the egg wash. So after you brush on top, right, you bake again for 5 minutes, you'll see it become very shining. So 4 parts of egg yolk, 1 part of cream. If you don't want, you can skip it, no problem. So over here, I have the yuzu cream. So same by page 11, you see there's a yuzu cream. The preparation method exactly same like yesterday, how I showed you the yuzu cream for senzu. Just the ratio for the butter and the cream and yuzu puree will be different. Okay, but the method exactly same. We cook until boil, then add in the butter, blend everything nicely. Okay, so I'm gonna put it, spread the layers. In the tarts, make sure it's flat.
Okay, if you make with converter, will it melt in the room temperature for the batter?
If you are putting 24 degrees, it will melt. Like I mentioned, the room temperature 24 degrees, it will melt.
Is grapeseed oil replaceable?
But you can use other cooking oil. Just the taste will be not as nice. Because the reason we use grapeseed oil a lot in pastry making, right? The reason is the taste is neutral. You don't get the taste like corn oil or other taste.
In Subway, can eggs be replaced with whipped cream or water?
No.
Egg the binding agent.
Yes, the egg is a binding agent. If you want to know the eggless, you check our eggless topic. There is a Subway without the eggs, okay? That's why application online, I think that is very, I would say is quite worth to get it, to subscribe it, because really there's a lot of plenty different recipe inside. And there's an eggless program that Chef Angelo take quite some time to develop it.
What is the baking temperature of the Subway?
Subway, oh, for this one?
Yeah, because you mentioned.
Okay, so baking temperature 150 to 160 degrees. If possible, I use 160 degrees. Bake around 20 minutes until it's dry.
What is the grammage for shiny egg wash part?
4 parts of egg yolk, which means if you are taking 40 grams of egg yolk, then 1 part of the cream, which means 10 grams of the cream. Yeah, 40 grams of egg yolk, 10 grams of cream. The ratio is 4 parts to 1 part.
Whitened egg, sugar is the usual cream. Does it need creaming method?
Sorry?
One of your procedures.
Mm-hmm.
Whiten the eggs with sugar is the usual cream. Number 2. Does it need creaming method?
For which recipe? The yuzu cream? Then page 12, then which? Number 2, bring yuzu puree to boil. Whiten eggs with sugar. Oh, mix the eggs and sugar like how we cook pastry cream. You have to mix until it's whitish, right? Same. No creaming. Just mix well until the mixture slightly white. Remember yesterday when we cooked the yuzu cream milk, I put the corn flour, egg yolk and sugar. I mix until it's slightly white. And guys, now I'm gonna place this inside the freezer to set. Later, when we glaze the apple, then we are going to place on top. Okay? Continue the question. Check freezer. 不要整个放下去，等下你顶住，你直接放旁边了。Alright. Guys, this recipe right will give you, I would say, around 20 pieces of the apple yuzu tart. Okay. So because it's a demo class, so I don't do so much. Otherwise, it will take quite some time. So due to I have to wait for the yuzu curd to set nicely, then I will just temporarily skip it first. But before we move to the next procedure, right? I want to explain you the yuzu candy apple. Yesterday, remember after I placed inside the mold, just can you bring the candy apple here? Just bring one more. I explain to them how to cook. I place inside a chest freezer. You see inside down. So again, guys, page 12. I explained you. Okay, guys, the yuzu candy apple, right? Because it will take some time to bake, and also I have to, during the baking, I have to press once a while, so it takes some time. So I pre-prepare it. Yesterday I done already put inside the mold, right? Just now this morning I already baked it. So I explained you the baking. Like yesterday, after we cover everything, put inside the apple inside the mold. When we put inside the oven 160 degrees, right? We have to bake around 15 minutes first. When you see after 15 minutes, right, the apple usually will start to bumps up because there's a lot of liquid inside the apple and the mixture. So it will tend to raise up a little bit. So if the case, right, you have to press the apple back while it's still hot. And there is a time we check whether the apple is cooked or not. Because when it comes out, right, the syrup or the juice from apple will come out a little bit on the side. You have to take a small palette knife to scrape the juice and see whether it will set or not once it's cold. So if it's set, then you can take out. That's how I check whether it's cooked or not. If it's not setting, put back inside the oven, bake for another 5 to 10 minutes. And if you see your apple is too, sometimes, right, if you are not soaked enough, the apple is going to bounce out a lot. You can take a seal pad. After bake 15 minutes, put on top to cover it. Let's say example, we can take a seal pad. We cover like this way. After we press everything down, continue bake for another 5 to 10 minutes. So usually, if you soak properly, 20 to 25 minutes is more than enough to bake the apple properly. Then after that, you can keep inside the freezer to set it. So after that, right, you get the apple like this. Okay. Now I'm not going to finish it yet because later I'm gonna glaze it. So I'm gonna keep inside the freezer first. But because of this one, right, the baking is quite tricky. You have to try. That's why I explained you nicely. 15 minutes is for you to check. After that, you have to see whether it's set or not. If the syrup is setting, you can take it out. If the syrup is not setting, you have to put it back again. And if the apple is coming up too much, okay, put a parchment or seal pad on top to cover it, so it's not going to raise up too much. Otherwise, it's going to change shape a lot. And in case when you take it out, the apple comes out from the mold because it raised out a lot, right? You can use a palette knife to scrape and put it back while it's still hot. Because when it's cooled down, it will set. You cannot place it back anymore. Okay? So next one, right? I'm going to start the finishing part. And one more thing. So as you can see, the brownie after bake, it's still hot, huh? Because we are not baking until fully cooked, the inside is still moist. The center is going to shrink a little bit. It's normal, no worries. Just use a palette knife, press a little bit. This is a fresh one I just made. Huh? Press it back. Alright, like this way. So after you cool down, we can unmold it. So we will get the same shape like the brownie just now I show you. Because the one is I baked and I pressed already. Alright. It's very normal, anything you bake, if you want it to be very creamy, not fully baked until like a sponge, right, the center are going to shrink a little bit. So for these brownies, right, if it's not shrinking, means you are over baked it already. It will become like a sponge texture instead of a creamy texture, correct? Okay, so guys, for the next one, right, I'm going to start to do the finishing for the blossom first. Over here, right, I have a vanilla chantilly. Yesterday I made already. Now I'm going to whip it up and I'm going to pipe. As you see the picture for the blossom, right, page 8. On top I have a chantilly I pipe. So now I'm going to show you. Any question? Guys, today I go fast because a lot of finishing we have to do. So if you feel I go too fast, you let me know. No. Total time is around 20 to 25 minutes for a touch shell with 160 degrees. So you bake 10 to 15 minutes, then you take it out, it's pre-baked. Then you have to pipe the almond cream. Then you bake again. If just a sablé, no almond cream inside, you can bake for around 20 minutes. Okay? How to egg wash? Egg wash can help to protect the tart from soggy. And also, like let's say example, the tart shell, I have almond cream inside, right? I put egg wash, I bake already. Keep inside the freezer, not inside the chiller, not inside the container. Okay, freezer. Because you have an almond cream, you have to take care of it. And after this tart, when you finish already, leave inside a chiller maximum 1.5 days. There's no way to keep the tarts more than 2 days and you still want it to be fresh. It's not possible. The almond cream has rum. You can take out the rum if you don't want to have rum. It won't affect, just remove the rum.
Can we remove the brownies and pot?
For brownies, because I bake it creamy in the middle, don't remove when it's still hot. Because you see in the previous, if you take any of my class, right, usually if I do travel cake, I remove while it's still hot. But for brownie, no. Because I just bake it nicely. In the center, still very creamy, you remove, right, it's going to break apart, okay? Wow, this one good, huh? Yes.
So for chantilly,
yeah.
we add the cold whipping cream now, the mixture made yesterday and then whip?
No, yesterday already put the cold cream inside. You didn't pay attention to the class. For chantilly that I have, all right, is beginning I warm out small part of the cream. Then after mix with the sugar, dissolve and the gelatin. After that, we add the cold cream inside. Keep minimum 8 hours. Then next day whip together. Okay? Not at now. Is already done yesterday. Then now just to have to whip it up. That's all. Yeah. Guys, don't confuse that. Any other question, Aza?
What nozzle are you using now?
Now is Saint Honore nozzle. Is a bit, I don't know if you know what is Saint Honore nozzle. It's a nozzle with a hole like this. So, yeah. So the numbers I'm using 6. One moment, it covered up. After I pack, I can let you know because the line cover I cannot see. So the ring, I take a 6 inches because the cake is 7 inches. I take a 6 inches. I make a mark. So I have a mark. Then pipe. So when we pipe right, everything goes to the middle, the center point. Usually the last one you have to be more careful, but you will be slightly higher because you have no space. But no worries, because after freeze, we are going to put the decor, it will cover this part. So I'm gonna pipe one more, we need two. And if possible, try to press the middle part a little bit. Otherwise, right, later when we transfer, there's a chance that it breaks. Like this better. The coconut help me to put inside the bowl. Just any question, Aza? Try to not keep the question in the end.
Can I know how much temperature for cake that I'm making?
160. Same with the tarts. Guys, for the piping, you have to practice. It looks easy, but it will take some time to learn usually. Yes?
Are we still able to reuse after whip the temperature?
Yes. After whip already, right, you can keep inside the chiller. Next time when you want to use, right, you just use a paddle to mix a little bit, collapse it a bit, and you whip again. You can reuse again. Any more question? Wow, good. Alright, again guys, you see, I have last one, always a little bit higher. No worries about it. It's very normal. Then guys, while waiting for the vanilla chantilly to freeze, now I'm gonna whip the coconut chantilly for the pandan layer cake. Remember yesterday I lined already the sponge and coconut chantilly, also the pandan cream milk. Now I'm gonna cut and pipe the top part. So for the coconut chantilly, Charles, can you help me to take out the pandan layer cake and the crispy base at the same time? So now for the pandan layer cake, page 5, you can see directly on the diagram, guys, easier. Page 7 on the diagram, I'm gonna assemble it. So guys, for the pandan layer cake, right, I cut it to the size I want. So over here, I cut to 3.5 because originally, right, is in a 30 × 40 frame. After, we cut to the size we want. You can cut any size, huh? But now right now I cut around the same as the recipe. So you place it standing like this, so the layer is straight. Okay. No, I'm gonna do 2, otherwise it takes too much time. And the crispy base the same way. Cut it similar size. And remember yesterday you asked me about the caramel sauce I haven't used is today. Okay? One is for sticking and give some taste to our pandan layer cake. Just make sure you have it on everywhere. So if we don't want too much on the cake, that's why I do like this way, we get a taste a little bit. Then choose a nice side, place on top, stick it nicely. So like this way, right, it won't remove after we move the cake, and also we get a nice taste. It's not going to be too sweet. And afterwards, with the pandan cream mousse, before we start the pandan cream mousse, right, again, pipe thin layers of the caramel sauce. Spread it even. So now you know where I use the caramel sauce. And afterwards, the pandan cream we have yesterday, right? Just randomly pipe. Make sure every bite we can eat it. Charles, can you help me to get the mango passion cream confit? Yep. Okay, after we are going to stick with the mango passion confit. Okay, guys, now I'm gonna keep inside the blast freezer to freeze for 5 minutes to make sure the cream mousse sets a little bit. So guys, for the chantilly, I pipe until piping consistency, but not too firm. It have to be slightly soft, so it's going to be smooth. So for the nozzle X05 again, the round nozzle. Guys, for the Santa Nore nozzle, just now the sharp one, 6X1. Any question, Azra? Okay.
Is there any way to change the chantilly if it's split or overcooked?
If you split overweight, right, you just have to reheat again to 30 to 40 degrees. Don't overheat. If you overheat, right, they are not going to whip out nicely. 30 to 40 degrees, right, then blend properly, keep it inside a chiller overnight. Next day you can whip again.
Is there any tips when cutting while frozen?
Any tips?
Any tips cutting while frozen?
There's no tips, but you cut it you have to make sure your products right in the temperature around minus 12 to minus 18. Don't let it colder than minus 18. Otherwise you cut, you cannot. Usually like this kind of 4-door freezer, like this kind of 4-door freezer, the frozen temperature for our products right is around minus 12 to 15. Is easiest to cut. Okay, just you can give me the banana layer cake. Any other question?
When do you cut the base?
Almond strazzle? When I cut? This morning I pre-cut because I don't think you want to see how I cut, right? But one small trick for you guys. For the something crispy, right? Don't cut directly from freezing. You put inside a chiller for a while, then only you cut. It's much easier. Okay? Now after it's freeze a little bit for the cream milk, I'm gonna pipe the chantilly on top. Randomly, big and small. It's important, guys, if you want to pipe nicely, you pipe it randomly, so the design is better. If you pipe it very consistent, it doesn't look good. And after we pipe the chantilly, right, use the steel modeling tools, hot water. We can create some hole on top. We can pipe the more color on it with the cream mousse and the caramel sauce. Again, very random. Hot water, guys, so it melts the surface a little bit. It's not going to stick with your chantilly. So after, we can pipe the cream on top. And caramel sauce. Alright, so now I'm gonna put it in the blast freezer to freeze it properly. Later we are going to spray with a neutral glaze. Any question for the banana layer cake? How long did I cut the strip? You mean the crispy base? Oh, how long? Around 21 to 23 centimeter. It depends on what size you want. If you follow the recipe there, right, you see the banana layer cakes 3.5 centimeter times 23. This is the one we sell in our online shop. Okay, then now let me double check. We go for 10 minutes break first. I prepare a little bit, then we can start to do all the finishing for all the products. Hey guys, welcome back. So now I'm gonna start to finish the first product, the apple and yuzu. So I move the candy apple. Now it's frozen, so you don't see any effects, but after when it defrosts, right, you see some sliced apple. Then over here, I have a neutral glaze. Okay, that I prepared earlier. You have the recipe inside the books, and also the method is similar with what I showed you yesterday for the spray glaze. Exactly same way how we cook, just without any citric acid solution. And we keep a temperature around 35. Then we can use it right away, just glaze on top of the candy apple. Guys, there's one more information, very important. When you are doing this glaze, right, you have to make sure you use a hot water. You check the recipe. The recipe is in page finishing part, page 19. Okay. The water I'm using, right, you must make sure it's hot water, which means because every country you have the water is a little bit different. Some of it is have more mineral, we call it as hot water. Some of it the mineral content is a bit less, we call it soft water. Soft water cook this recipe doesn't work. Okay, must make sure we use the hot water. Or another way you use, if your country is soft water, you use a mineral water. Make sure you use a proper mineral water, then it will work, okay? Otherwise, right, even you add extra pectin, you add extra gelatin, it doesn't work. I tried many times before. Then second thing, the brand of the enhanced pectin I'm using is called Louis Francois. You buy the Louis Francois enhanced pectin, it's the same brand that I'm using. Because if you change to other brand of pectin, right, sometimes it doesn't work, okay? So better use Louis Francois enhanced pectin for napach. As the pectin is especially using for glaze one. So it can do the neutral glaze, which is very nice, okay? That's the information I can share to you. Are there any questions from them regarding this? You'll see later when I spray and I glaze, right, you'll see the one with glaze, right, usually a little bit more shining. But if you have something which is like I do the pandan layer cake, I pipe, right, you cannot glaze because the glaze will stuck. So I have to use a spray. That's why the preparation is different. I have sofa and the stick. Is it okay? No, I tried before. You have to adjust a lot. So I suggest you to buy other pectin, the Louis Francois. I tried the Sosa one. I'm not saying it's no good. It's good for the spray glaze, okay. But for this neutral glaze, right, it doesn't work. And now guys, after the glaze setting, over here I have desiccated coconut. Just stick the side. And place it on top of the tart. Azhar, you can ask question now. If they have.
Can we use the glaze already prepared and sell in small cake?
Yes, for if you want to use a neutral glaze for buy one, for this recipe okay, but for the later the next one for senzu is cannot. Later I explain you the reason why when I do the next recipe.
For the neutral glaze, the gelatin ratio also 6:1.
Yes, if you are using 200 bloom.
So what you're rolling now, you're using coconut?
Desiccated coconut. Alright. So if the cake is frozen, you see when you prepare it's very simple, very straightforward, no headache, very easy to do. But if the cake is not frozen, right, if it start to be soft, you have a lot of headache. So you have to make sure you work fast. Alright. Yes. And as I mentioned to them also, is for neutral glaze. So the type of the NH pectin called NH pectin for napage. NAPPAGE is especially for neutral glaze. Just you can put inside the chiller first. So one moment. So guys, the stick we don't remove right now because it's still frozen, difficult to remove. We keep inside a chiller, let it defrost, then easy to remove. And now I'm gonna prepare the next glazing senzu. So guys, one more small trick. If you see there's an air bubble on top of the glaze, right? Because for neutral glaze we cannot blend. If you see when we heat up time there's an air bubble, we put the tissue on the surface and remove it. And for the next cake I'm gonna glaze, right, is senzu, the one we spray cocoa butter yesterday. So you see we have a nice effect. So like this way, right, the tissue can take out the bubble. We are going to get a glaze which is very clear. Make sure the temperature between 32 to 35 degrees for glazing a cake with a cocoa butter. Otherwise, the cocoa butter will melt. Spread out the excess of the glaze. So like this way, right, we can get the glaze which is really nice. And one more thing, guys, like just I mentioned, for this cake, we really need to use the glaze that I homemade. If you use a spray glaze, it will be different. And also, if you use the glaze you buy, right, usually it doesn't work. Why? Because we spray cocoa butter first. This glaze, I try many times to adjust the recipe to make sure it can stick with cocoa butter. I use it for my competition during the World Cup. Because the surface of cocoa butter, if you are using normal glaze, right, other neutral glaze, sometimes after you glaze already, you see the glaze are going to drop by itself because it cannot stick on the fat. But this one can. That's why it's quite tricky to prepare this one. But it's only for the cake that you have cocoa butter on top. If like the normal cake, or also there's now the apple confit, right, you use the normal neutral glaze, no problem. Okay? Just get another one. So I push to the side. I'm gonna glaze one more. And in the shop that we have, I do quite a lot of the cake with this kind of technique. So for the last minute ordering or when we want to come out with the cake, right, it's very fast. I don't need to use many type of glaze, only one glaze for everything. But we can get the different colors for our cakes already. And one more thing, guys, remember yesterday I mentioned, when you want to unmold, right, the cake really have to be very frozen. If a cake is not frozen enough, right, the cocoa butter will drop. And I repeat again, guys, temperature plays a big part. 32 to 35, maximum 36, okay. But don't higher than that, otherwise cocoa butter will melt. But don't too low, because this glaze, right, is a bit stickier if compared to a normal glaze. If 30 degrees, right, it's too thick. So I wait for a while to let the cake to set. Any question? Yes, the cake have to be very, very frozen. I would say the temperature have to be lower than -20.
Do you need to rest the neutral glaze overnight?
Don't need. Usually after you cook, when it's cooled down, then you can use. You cannot use it right away because after we cook, it's very hot. Okay. Any other question? No? Okay. So now I'm going to transfer to the underliner. So to stick the cake easier, I buy a little bit of vanilla shanty. So it doesn't affect the taste, but it can help to stick. Then clean the edges to make sure it's no extra neutral glaze move around. Question? No question? I thought you can ask if you see I do something like this.
When glazing yesterday, sometimes we see ice crystal on top. How to handle it?
Ice crystal, just use a tissue to remove it before you glaze. As if you see ice crystal on top, you have to make sure you remove it. Otherwise, right, when you glaze, right, the ice crystal are going to form in between the glaze and the cake. And when the cake defrosts, right, it becomes water. Then it will affect the finishing of the cake. So when we keep the cake, right, like I mentioned, once you unmold, you have to use a cling film, wrap it nicely. Individually wrap, so you can prevent the ice crystal. Any other things? No. Just get the pink color spray. We have to spray the pink for blossom. The cocoa butter, velvet spray pink color outside on top of the oven. Alright. Then guys, again, the leftover glaze, right, you can always scrape back and put it into container, melt and strain it again, you can reuse again. So now, because the cake is still frozen, I won't put the decoration on top straight away, otherwise it's going to have a watermark. I'm going to keep inside the chiller, let it defrost for at least half hours. So after finish the senzu, now I'm gonna start to spray the velvet spray for blossom for the bottom part. Neutral glaze, without saying the spray one, neutral glaze. Page 19, neutral glaze, no spray. What else? Okay guys, over here I have a velvet spray. Like you see from the recipe, page 20, the last one, chocolate, cocoa butter and coloring. This one I put pink color inside. We have to make sure for spraying for frozen cake, right? The temperature is above 45 degrees. So I have to warm it up. Help me to answer. Just now the other student asked already. Yes, if possible. In Malaysia, all our tap water is hard water, so I don't have that problem. Tray. This one for spray. Okay, good. So guys, I'm gonna prepare the area for spray. It will be slightly noisy, so we have to stop the question temporarily because the machine will be quite loud. So guys, the spray gun I'm using, right, is 1.3 of the size. So after you spray, right, the velvet effect dot 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 is more. Don't use the gun which is too fine. Alright, then for the blossom, as you can see, the cake is slightly shorter compared to the senzu because we're going to have another layers on top. And now I'm going to spray with the velvet spray. And guys, really important is the temperature. If it's too cold, right, when you spray on top, later after we keep the cake, there's a chance it will crack because cocoa butter, but it will set by itself. Alright. No, pellet knife. Container pellet knife. So now, same way, I'm gonna keep this inside the chiller first. And after this, I'm gonna spray the neutral glaze. get the spray glaze here. So the next one, right, I'm going to use a spray glaze for the neutral glaze to spray the panel layer and the top part of the blossom. And guys, for this one, right, it's really important. The gun have to be minimum 1.3. Just now velvet actually it depends if you want to have a more velvet effect, you use the gun which is slightly bigger hole. But for the spray glaze, neutral glaze, right, you have to make sure you use the minimum 1.3. Otherwise, when you spray, right, it doesn't come out. And also, second things, right, the machine, the compressor that you have, right, must make sure it's strong enough. If you use the type which is very small, right, when you spray neutral glaze, right, it will stuck inside. It's not going to spray out properly. So I will say if it's a compressor, you have to use 2.5 horsepower or higher for the neutral glaze. Velvet spray, okay, no problem, because it's more liquid, but neutral glaze is very thick, so you have to use a horsepower which is higher, 2.5 or above. And the gun size, you have to be 1.3 or above. 这个我要再煮。So for the neutral glaze, right, I have to heat it to 80 degrees Celsius when I spray. So we are going to bring it close to boil. So reheat again by using a low heat. Ready to use velvet spray, if you have, can. But I don't think in the market sell ready to use velvet spray. Oh, I think they mentioned there's one type which is in can to spray can. If the cocoa butter set by if the cocoa butter set by itself, right, it will crack. So make sure you don't spray the cocoa butter too thick, and make sure there's no ice in between the cocoa butter and the cake. And one more, the temperature of cocoa butter have to make sure it's warm enough. 两个拿过来，我一次过放在同一个来 spray. So for the top part of the blossom, and the panel layer cake, I'm going to place together and spray. It's using the same glaze. Okay. So over here, right, I have a spray glaze. Make sure we don't overcook it. Okay. Make sure we don't overcook it. Otherwise, right, it's going to be too thick. If it's too thick, right, you have to add a little bit of water inside. Okay. Alright. 然后给我那香槟。So guys, I'm going to place the chantilly on top. But make sure before we place, right, because during the transportation it might drop if you don't put anything on top. Use a torch, just melt the surface a little bit. Make sure your cocoa butter is melted so it can stick well. Alright, and buy a small amount of the Chantilly cream. Then press from the middle to make sure it sticks well. Alright. That's why when I build the cake, right, I don't build it too high. So when I place the top part, it looks more balanced. Otherwise, right, the cake is going to be too high. It's not going to be nice. And right now, the effects of the neutral glaze still looks a little bit whitish, especially you can see here, because it's still frozen. Once it defrosts, right, you will see there's a coating on top, transparent color. So now I'm going to place it inside the chiller. After defrost totally, I'm going to put the decoration on top.
What is the ideal temperature for this velvet spray?
45 to 50 degrees.
Is it like different infrared thermometer and the thermometer that chef used to heat sugar syrup and
If you cook something hot higher than 100 degrees, right? If you cook something higher than 100 degrees Celsius, then you have to use the, if you cook something higher than, I would say 80 degrees, it's better to use a probe thermometer or digital one. You cannot use infrared because the steam will block the actual temperature. You don't have exactly same temperature if you use infrared. So below 80 degrees, when there's no steam, anytime you can use infrared. Alright. For probe, 0 degrees to 180, I won't say 180 lah. 170 is still quite accurate. If it's above 170, right, I suggest to use sugar thermometer. Okay. If I can use this, I won't use this because easier. I don't need to wash. You clear? So when you see I check the anything below 60 degrees, I will always use this. So now if the base is a bit too big, I can use the knife to cut a little bit. So we get a finishing which is better. So to make it look nicer, I will put the desiccated coconut on the side. To stick. Ooh. Alright. Then same, I'm gonna keep inside a chiller before the final decoration.
How to avoid condensation after applying gourmet glaze to the decoration?
But the only way to avoid it, right, is to, after you put the gourmet glaze, you spray the velvet on top so you don't have a condensation. They will still have a little bit, it's just not that much because the velvet effect make it look like it's not so obvious, but you can't avoid it. That's why if I like to use gourmet glaze usually for travel cake, so I don't have that problem. Okay, now for the shoe. Okay. So guys, now we are going to start to finish the Paris breast. For the Paris breast, right, as you can see over here, I have the shoe we baked today. I show you. The shoe we baked today, you see like this. Then after, to save the time, I get the ring with a height around 3 centimeters. I use a saw knife to cut. Okay. If the bottom have hole, no worries. We are going to place the filleting inside, so no worries. Because usually when we bake like this with high heat, right, when the shoe is tending to grow a lot, the bottom layers of the skin is going to be very thin. So when you unmold, right, especially if you bake on the silk pad, they're easier to happen like this. But it's not a big deal. So over here I have the chocolate chantilly. And here, right, I have the praline filleting. So you check the page. Okay. 16. Oh, sorry, 17. Check the page 17. You have a praline filleting base. Is same method as the almond croissant, but this one is using chocolate and hazelnut. So we melt the dark chocolate, 67%. Okay, melt it and mix with the praline paste and hazelnut paste. After mix, just fold with the filleting. So it's actually same with the almond croissant, but almond croissant is using almond douja. This one is using hazelnut. It works for both. And now I'm gonna place the crispy at the bottom first. Make sure you push at the bottom, so later you don't have an air gap in between. If the crust is cracking, no worries, because you can't really see. As long as when you cut, right, it will still remain have a shape and you get the extra crispiness. And one more thing, guys, if you prepare the shoe in advance, okay, usually I keep inside the freezer. When I want to use, I reheat with 120 degrees for around 5 minutes, so they remain crispy again. If you bake fresh, then no problem, you can skip this step. All right. And here I have a chocolate chantilly. I'm gonna whip it up. No? Okay, good. So same way for the chocolate chantilly, whip until piping consistency. So I check the consistency of the chantilly. It's still a little bit too soft. Alright, now it's good. As you can see, it hold the shape but it's soft. Okay? Almost like a soft pink meringue. Then use a big round nozzle. The size of the nozzle, right, is around 2 centimeters, I would say. There's no number for it, so I cannot tell you, but just make sure it's big enough. Around 2 to 2.5 centimeters of the round nozzle. Or you can use the another way, right? You can use the round cutter. Okay? You can use, but you just make sure when you cut, you have to cut nicely, otherwise it's difficult to hold the round cutter. Then just this one, I need hot water. Hot water. Alright. Just buy a little bit of the chantilly inside. Yes. It's okay. Then over here, right, I have the chocolate cream mousse already stick together with the chocolate brownie. So the method for the brownie is same with the cheese brownies, is the same recipe. Then the cream mousse, right, is very straightforward. It's a cream glaze with chocolates mixed together. So I pre-prepare. And I pipe the cream mousse inside the mold and stick with the brownie. So now I'm going to unmold and press. Make sure it sticks nicely with a chantilly. Because we pipe a chantilly, now we squeeze in, the chantilly is going to cover the side. You won't have an air gap inside. For making the chantilly not going to dry out very fast, because usually, right, for chocolate chantilly you have cocoa content. So usually when you want to whip, right, the chantilly or chocolate chantilly is too firm. It's very difficult to whip. With some inverted sugar, it helps to make it slightly softer, and when we whip, right, it's not going to dry too fast. Usually you will see a little bit inverted sugar inside any kind of chocolate chantilly. Without the chocolate chantilly, it works, guys. If this is somebody recipe without chocolate chantilly, but you will see when you use the chocolate chantilly a while, right, it starts to get very firm. No, if you cover nicely the fillets with all the fats like hazelnut base or chocolate, if it mix well, it can last 1 month. It won't inside the freezer. It won't become soggy. That's the reason I use the. You see all the crispy base, right, is reconstitute everything covered with fats. So now I'm gonna pipe the chantilly on top. Just you help me, right, to put inside the normal piping bag, plastic piping bag. Then we have to pipe the small shoe. So guys, now Chef Charles, the chef assistant, are going to help me to pipe the small shoe. I make a hole and going to pipe the chantilly inside. So he will help me to finish it. So we can save the time. No, glucose syrup is not inverted sugar. Glucose syrup is a single sugar. I mean, how to call monosaccharide. Monosaccharide, or is single molecule sugar, which is glucose also only. Then sugar is a two molecule called what? Disaccharide, which means two molecule. Sorry, I'm not a scientist student, but normal sugar is one molecule of glucose, one molecule of fructose inside. Then it becomes sugar. Trimoline or inverted sugar is two molecules. It's also glucose and fructose, but by adding acid or enzyme inside, and with a heat, they invert these two molecules by not crystallizing together. So it remains liquid. So it's not the same thing. Glucose is not the inverted sugar, guys. And guys, over here I have hot water with a measuring spoon. Press the top part, so later I can place another shoe on top. No, corn syrup you can replace with glucose, but cannot replace with inverted sugar. And this person, I think he or she should know. Yeah, corn syrup will replace with glucose. Is similar, very close to glucose, but so far away from the inverted sugar. And after, you just get a block of chocolate with the zester. So like this, we can create some design on top. Alright, so now I'm gonna keep while waiting for the top part of shoe, I'm gonna keep inside the chiller first to let it set. I'm gonna place inside the freezer better, so later it hold the shape easier. I can easier change to another container. Then the next one, for the top part, right, because I'm going to glaze it, I'm going to dip inside the chocolate glaze, so I have to dip inside the gourmet glaze first. So over here I have the gourmet glaze. And the small shoe already filled up with the chantilly, guys, so it's not empty inside. It's normal. The Paris bread, after we prepare everything right, only have 1 day shelf life inside the fridge. Okay, so after done, we cannot keep more than 1 day, otherwise right, it's going to be soggy. So a day inside the chiller, no worries. So now I'm gonna pipe the gourmet glaze inside the mold. is a lot of nuts inside because I'm using the gourmet glaze for the brownie. So we have walnut inside. You can use the gourmet glaze without the nuts, guys, it's easier. So after pipe the gourmet glaze, put the shoe inside. Chef Charles, you help me to check the chocolate glaze. Is it melted? Same guys, the gourmet glaze right have to be tempered. So the temperature we use it around, it's dark chocolate, so we use it around 30 to 32 degrees Celsius. Okay, put inside a blast freezer for a while. So while waiting for the, normally after I put right, I keep inside the freezer. So today I want to be faster, I keep inside a blast freezer for a while. Now while waiting for it to set, I'm going to glaze the travel cake with the gourmet glaze. So you can see the recipe for the chocolate brownie. We have the gourmet glaze with the toasted walnuts. I cut to small, I put it inside. So if you see right now, for the gourmet glaze, right, we have a lot of chunks of nuts inside. Now I have to make sure the temperature is around 32, so the glaze is going to be not too thick. Now it's a bit too cold, 30, I'm going to warm it up. Open the travel cake, go on top.
How to avoid the yuzu or lemon paste egg?
But you just have to use a fresh egg and make sure you cook it nicely. Don't overcook it too much. And the egg yolk, the egg you use, right, have to make sure it's fresh enough. If it's old egg, the egg which is not fresh, right, you will always taste eggy. Is it okay? Okay. So guys, right now I accidentally overheated the gourmet glaze a bit, so I use a big bowl to cool it down. Make sure you use it around 32 degrees. So even we are not bringing down the temperature, we use directly straight away 32 degrees. It works because the because the travel cake is from chiller, so slightly cold, it will still set. Alright. Thank you. Can take out the cake. Okay. Nhiều rồi. Yep. Yes, sir. It will set. You have to work super fast because compound chocolate. It will set very fast. So you might have to use the temperature higher. But I would say compound it will be quite difficult because it's going to set very, very fast. So now I'm gonna glaze it. So the edges usually more difficult to cover. Make sure we cover it nicely. And you'll see after a while the gourmet glaze will set. Because the temperature is not too hot. In the AC room, we can store the gourmet glaze inside the AC room.
Why don't you use dipping method for brownie?
Dipping method, I feel it is a little bit difficult because now the brownie is quite big. If I want to use dipping rod, I have to prepare a gourmet glaze with big amounts, only I can dip. So if I want to use dipping rod, I have to make sure my brownie is really frozen. But the problem is, when I dip inside the gourmet glaze, after I take out, because the brownie is frozen, they have condensation. So for travel cake, I prefer to do like this way, they won't have any condensation. So before it's fully set right, we have to remove a little bit from the wire rack so it won't stick. So the edges is going to be cleaner. Otherwise, if it stick right, it's not going to be nice. Sorry? Please mention a temperature of? Now I'm using only gourmet glaze. Don't think about chocolate glaze. Later when I want to use chocolate glaze, I split. For gourmet glaze, make sure you use the temperature around 30 to 32, almost at temper. Okay? You don't really need to temper on the table, but use the temperature between 30 to 32. Okay? So you won't have the fat bloom. You can, if you don't want to have any nuts, you use that. But for the, it's basically same recipe, but just one with nuts, one without the nuts. So after this, I will keep the, because I want to present a bit faster, so I will keep the brownie in the chiller just for a while to set the gourmet glaze properly. Then after that, I can decorate. Usually, if you have time, you just leave in the room temperature. Just after 2-3 minutes, you can take out. So we can take out the shoe already. You get a small shoe for me. Thank you. So I come back to the small shoe, guys. For the chocolate glaze. For the chocolate glaze, right, use the temperature. If you want to use it for glazed cake, right, use the temperature around 32 degrees.
or oven have to fight something in the middle to make it open and crack. What is the thing that they fight?
It's soft butter. It's a soft butter that we pipe to make sure we have a nice cracking for the travel cake. So like that way, right? If you pipe the butter, it will only crack on the middle. It's not going to crack everywhere. So guys, now I'm gonna dip the shoe with the gourmet glaze inside the chocolate glaze. Chocolate glaze, keep it around 32 degrees Celsius. Dip and shake off the excess of the glaze and clean. So like this way, right, we have a shining shoe. It looks very nice. You can continue ask question, Azhar. Okay. Like the question just now, I explain a bit more. If you don't pipe the butter on the middle, right, when we do the baking for most of travel cake, they are going to expand, but they are not going to expand evenly. They are going to expand like everywhere. So with the butter in the middle, right, is to make sure it only expand in the middle, so it crack in the middle, so it looks better and more even. Well, not everyone likes to have that design, but usually most of our pastry chef will want it to be a little bit cleaner. That's why we want it to pipe on the middle. Just can you give me the big shoe in the chest freezer, right, just now? The one we done already, Paris Brest. Yes, this is the chocolate glaze.
So small chop inside is double coated.
Oh, small shoe, I pipe is what? Oh, it's double coated, yes. It's gourmet glaze, then after chocolate glaze. If you directly go for chocolate glaze, right, because the surface is not even, it's not going to have a smooth surface. That's why you have to have gourmet glaze, then after that chocolate glaze. And you don't need to worry too much because the gourmet glaze, right, is not sweet. Only the chocolate glaze is sweet, so it just have to be thin layers on the chocolate glaze.
So for the chocolate cake one, right, you need to whip butter.
No, it's just a creamy butter. If you want to whip, you can whip. It's not a must to be a butter. Some people use any fat. That's why you see sometimes, right, they will use a scraper, dip inside the oil and put on the middle. It works also just a fat to make sure the mixture cannot stick, so it open. So guys, now I'm gonna apply some caramel sauce. To stick. I always like to prepare one piece extra in case any piece is not looking so nice. I have an extra. To stick, so it's not going to be too slippery. Just give me the chocolate decoration for this. The one in the book. Okay, time is still fine. Okay. So for this, right, I'm gonna put the chocolate decoration because it's the last step. So over here I have a chocolate swirl. One more I'm going to show how to do a chocolate swirl, so no worries. Place it randomly. Yes.
Check again for the neutral glaze gelatin. The total gelatin mass is 170.8 grams.
Okay.
So the ratio is 1/5, not 1/6. I do the wrong calculation.
Neutral glaze for which page? The last one? Okay. It's okay, guys. You follow 172.8 because now, right, I use all the in the recipe I use is 200 bloom. So you don't worry about this. You just use the water times 6. It works. Okay, no headache. Sorry, it's my. Just the clip. Thank you. Alright. So now I'm gonna keep inside the chiller. Remember guys, if you want to serve the same day inside the chiller, after that, usually the next day is not as nice. That's the characteristic of shoe. I cannot do much. Okay. Try again, try. So for the travel cake, over here I have a crystallized walnut, the extra one. I'm going to stick with the temple chocolate. Just next one, right? You bring me the senju decoration. Oh no, sorry. We have to check the chocolate, the block. This one, guys, for the travel cake, right, we have to leave in the room temperature around 24 degrees Celsius. Actually, the best, right, is to leave overnight. The next day when you eat it, right, the brownish texture is going to be better. So this is done. So the decoration for the Paris breast, now I will show you. Over here, I have a block of chocolate. So to create this block of chocolate, you melt the dark chocolate, okay, to 45 degrees or 50 degrees. Then directly, you put inside the container. Don't stir too much, guys. We want to fully melt all the crystal. Put inside the container and directly put inside the chiller. So after 3 to 4 hours, when it's set right, you remove from the container and leave in the room temperature for a while. When it starts to be soft, we can use the round cutter to scrape it. When you leave too long inside the room temperature, it melted, you put back inside the chiller. Because this chocolate is not so stable, because it's not tempered, we force to set, so it's a bit pliable. So when we scrape right, we can get the decoration like a swirl. So if you see, I use a round cutter, just move fast so we can get a nice swirl. This is the decoration I use for the Paris breast. So this one, right, in a short period, right, you can do a lot and keep. And this one, right, after we just done, let's say example, after you scrap a lot, right, you have to keep inside the chiller for a while to let it set before you use. Okay? So any question for this, Azza? Just one.
After the class,
How come? What?
how can we clear any doubt?
No, you clear right now. Don't clear after the class. No, you can ask the question in Upcast Chef Online. I think they will open a platform to ask, okay? But guys, I'm doing for this class, but I cannot answer you all the time. It's not for lifetime. So I will try to answer. If there's a question, you can ask through the application online. They will inform me. I will get back to you. But it's better when we do a quiz. I mean, when we do a Zoom class, the main reason, right, is to let you ask the question as soon as possible. So I will try my best to reply, but there's too much question. A day, right, I think there's 100 questions asking me. So I can't really reply everything. So if it's a logical question, then I'm gonna reply nicely. Okay? Any other question? Senzu, Charles, decoration. Yeah, yes. Other.
How long can it last in the freezer storage? If freezer minus 20 degrees, can we keep more than 1 week in the freezer?
No. Any cake after glaze, maximum a day inside the freezer. Next day you have to serve it. Okay. Otherwise the glaze is going to dry up, and you see, right, there's a crystal on top. It's like cracking and not smooth.
Can we use the same recipe of dark chocolate brownie glaze or white chocolate brownie glaze?
Let me double check. Let me see. Sorry guys. Just now you asked me about gourmet glaze for the brownies and the last one, right? The brownies one is better, it's softer. So for the recipe, if you want to switch to the white chocolate, you use the one under the recipe of brownie travel cake, because that is better for my personal view, because it's going to be slightly softer. The one I keep in the last final one, right, is the same method, but because the grapeseed oil is a little bit lesser, so it's going to be harder. So if you want to be more crispy, you use the last recipe. If you want to be softer when you cut, it doesn't crack, you use the recipe in the travel cake. Okay. If white chocolate one, I prefer to use the one in the travel cake, because you have cocoa butter inside. It makes it more liquid, easier to use.
How long can we store the brownies?
If you, before you put the gourmet glaze, whatever, you store the brownies inside the freezer. Basically, you can store forever. It won't spoil inside the freezer. But the thing is, to keep it fresh, I would say a month. Within a month, you have to consume it. Then, after you put gourmet glaze, everything with ganache, everything, 3 days in the room temperature. A week inside the chiller.
Can we slice the cake once we see the layer?
Of course, of course. That's why I'm so rushed. You know why? Because I want to slice it. Okay guys, next one, I'm going for the decoration of senzu. So I pre-prepare. So just to make sure you understand how I make it, okay? So over here, I have a stencil. Okay, I cut with a cardboard. This is what we use for our online shop. So first, I use the cardboard to cut out the white chocolate. Okay, see? Then after, I spray the design I want, and I pipe the chocolate on top to create like a tree. Because this design I created during a Chinese New Year, so I want to have a feel, or the whole design, the themes, right, is more like a spring, like a spring. Chinese New Year, is it spring? Is it, yeah, correct, spring, right? Yeah, spring themes. So I have like flowers, and the design is pink color, so it's more like a Chinese New Year effect. And after, I have a stencil. I cut pink color decoration over here. So I'm gonna stick it together right now. I cannot show you everything on this. It takes long time to do. So I show you the shortcut of it, which I prepare everything so you can see. If you want to see more, you go to my Instagram. I think I remember I do the small clips how to do this. So I use cold spray to set it a little bit. Usually if I do for production, right, I do a lot, I don't need to use cold spray, so it can go faster. Sorry, you have enough time to set. Now I want to go faster, so I have to do like this way. So over here I have the egg-shaped mold I'm going to use for the stand. Melt it to make it flat. Okay, little bit of chocolate. Alright, this one for Senju. Okay, then for the blossom, right, it's more straightforward. Over here, we have the method I do, right. I have the plastic. I spray the thin layer of white chocolate on top. I cut to the shape, okay, then curve straight away, then join it together, so you get the envelope. Again, same. If you want to see how I make this one very close, you can check in the Facebook or Instagram. I have the method on doing this. If you see the video of the Senju and Blossom, you can see this. Okay? So I'm gonna decor the Senju and Blossom first. Either one first, just Senju or Blossom.
The woman is 75% dark chocolate. Need to add more oil.
I would suggest yes. It's better to add a little bit more oil if you're using the higher content of chocolates.
How can dye white chocolate to pink color? Is it use oil-based coloring?
Yes, you have to add oil-based coloring. For the chocolate oil, use oil-based coloring. So over here, right, for the chocolate deco at the side, I have two sizes. One is taller, like this way, and one is shorter. The other one is around 2.5 centimeter tall. The other one, right, is around 1 centimeter.
what is the temperature of the room chef is working?
24, 24, 22. When this area, okay, the other side, because they are in front of the air condition, they are very cold. The area over here is around 22 to 24. It's quite a nice environment to work. Don't work too low temperature. Like if you are working on 18 or 20, right, the chocolate work, right, is going to set too fast. I would say if you want to work fast to make chocolate, 20 degrees is good, 22, but don't go 18, difficult. The Papa Chef online. If don't have, get the Ocean Day one, the logo. Thank you. Charles, you check if have Papa Chef online one first. So for the decoration, stick it nicely. I stick some sauce to stick with the gold leaf.
How long can we prepare and keep in the day?
If you done already, you keep inside the chiller. You can keep 2 weeks to 1 month, no problem. And guys, over here I have the dry rose petal.
Does chocolate and coloring need to have blend?
Yes. If not hand blend, right, very difficult for it to, I mean, it's possible to mix without hand blender, but then very difficult to combine nicely. All right. So for the senzo is done. So now I'm gonna continue with the blossom. So guys, you see, after the cake is already defrosted, right? You see the neutral glaze is very shining. Just now it looks like whitish. you don't feel it's shining, but after defrost it will be very shining. Charles not around. Oh. Well, 两个啊。Guys, I'm gonna change the decoration. This one not nice. It's not round, so I will show you later. I will keep inside the chiller first, otherwise later difficult to cut. So for the yuzu apple tart,
Is there anything on the chocolate
sorry?
prevent something like always break?
No, it's not always break. This one my assistant helped me to do right. They are not making it round, so you cannot match the cake size. That's why when I do right, there's a hole, so I break it. There's nothing to, you just only thing is you have to work carefully and make sure the shape is correct. If the shape right, because when they do right, they put just pass me the cake ring. This is something not so smart, I would say. They place the ring, they place one decoration outside, they place second decoration outside, then the third one, right? Everything on the ring, right? Then it's not round. So when you have something like this, right? The first one you can use because it follows the shape of the ring. After the other two you can't use. That's why the other two I cannot use. All will break because they are not follow exactly the same shape of the ring. It's like an oval shape instead of the round shape. Then now for the decoration of this, right? I have an apple shape. Then this one I create with a stand. Just you see the stencil for apple. So you see I have a stencil of apple. Just apply the chocolate on it, then take it out. You'll get the shape like this. Okay? It's quite simple. Alright, for the apple, you can off just the glass freezer. Is it done the side? You pass to me. Otherwise I do. Come, just give to me. I can do. Oh no. 那整个给拿过来。那个chocolate 呢？我 pass 给你的chocolate呢？不会粘的。你看，全部开起来了。不要拿它的边。Yes. Paano lagi na so? 还有那个香鸡，把一点来 stick。Then after that, put some shanty on the middle for sticking the envelope. Okay. Good. 看到我的 clip 吗？ clip 这个没有用了，什么可以这样？然后给我那一个。Sorry, this one? It's okay. Later I repair. So after, just place the rose petal. Sorry? I'm using Silhouette Cameo, so I don't know about click cut. You can check, but I'm using Silhouette Cameo. Guys, you have any question, faster ask. Then I'm gonna explain later, because later I'm gonna cut the slice and let you see the inside. Because right now you are I just have to do a decoration. Holy. Mm-hmm.
Is it possible to place the cake in it?
Is it possible? How you gonna taste it? How you gonna taste it? You MCO, you cannot come. Ah, there's a way you order from Oceante. Delivery possible. Alright. This one later when presentation I'm gonna stick nicely. So this one on the side. Just alright, the last one to decorate this one. Guys, you can see after defrost, right, especially on the round surface, right, the spray glaze is going to be very nice. That's the reason just now you asked me, right, about the neutral glaze, pour and spray. Pour one you cannot do this. It's going to trap a lot of glaze. But spray one you can get a nice shape of it. Okay. So over here I have the desiccated coconuts. Sorry, the coconut flake. For this one, you just get the old coconut and the difficult part is how you're gonna take it out. You have to take out the middle part, the mid part, then use a peeler to peel. So after peel, right, you can directly put inside the mold, round mold, and dry inside the oven 80 degrees Celsius. So you can get like this. Or another way, if you want it to have some taste, you put inside a simple syrup, 50 sugar, 50 water, you boil together for 1 minute, then you take out and you dry. Okay? Again, if you want to see exactly how I do it, okay, you go to the Instagram, you find the pandan layer cake. There's a video on how to do this. For the people who are signing for Upclass Chef Online, which we see, in one of the intensive class, we go show how to do this, but I don't remember which topic. But it's very simple. It's very straightforward. It's not too difficult. Just peel and dry. Just we have cleaned the side, everything. Then we are going to just leave this and this over here. The other can clear already. After that, we are going to arrange over there. Alright. Are there any question from them? Okay, faster. No, faster answer the question. in room temperature, let's say example, if it's 24 degrees, you can keep for 2 hours, it will melt. But it's not nice to eat. I prefer to eat it within 10 minutes from chiller, so the texture is good, okay? But it stand inside the room temperature like this, it's not going to melt. 2 hours, no problem.
So the brownies is served in the room temperature?
Yes, brownies room temperature. It's a travel cake. So that's why you see I cover everything, and when you live in the room, right, the ganache can last 3 days. It's not the cake can last 3 days, it's the ganache, okay? Otherwise it will spoil.
For the chocolate Paris bread brownies, it takes 15 minutes, right? Less than the travel cake?
Yes, I bake only 8 to 10 minutes because it's only 1 centimeter thickness. 8 to 10 minutes, very short time. So they remain very creamy. Guys, faster, any question? Ask me now, don't ask me after.
Can the travel cake do upside down?
Upside down, what do you mean? I mean this one upside down, can you put a bit lesser of the mixture? You can do upside down, so the surface will be flat. But because I want to put the ganache together, so cannot put upside down. You cannot put the ganache at the bottom of the sponge, otherwise when you cut, right, the ganache is going to mash out. So guys, just some idea I want to explain to you all. You see all the cake over here, right, all the layers, always from soft to firm. Crispy can be the bottom or on top of a sponge like I explained to you yesterday. Or if your sponge is too light, it's too soft, you don't put the crispy on top of it. So when you cut the cake, right, it's not going to mash up. This is a basic idea we have to follow.
Can explain all the dessert in detail?
How to, I don't get it. Explain all the design in details means?
All the dessert details, like components, and then
Yeah, I can.
how to do the chocolate curd.
Chocolate curd? The chocolate curd? Go and watch the video in this 1 month. I specially make for you to see the chocolate curd. Now you ask me how to do. Go and watch the video. You have 1 month time to watch. But I can explain to you the details after we finish all the questions first. No more? Continue? No more? Okay. Alright, one by one. So you have a diagram, guys. You see this? For senzu, we have a crispy base and the almond jacon. On top of almond jacon, we have a yuzu cream milk and the strawberry compote. And on top, we cover with the cheese mousse. So for this one, right, it's okay for the jacon and the crispy overturn. It doesn't really matter. When you cut, it's going to remain the same. Because the crispy, right, is not too hard. It's quite easy to use spoon to cut. But I cannot put the strawberry compote at the bottom of the jacon or at the bottom of the crispy. Otherwise, when we cut with a spoon, right, it's going to mash up everything. Okay? So something soft to firmer. Any question for this? Okay. So the next one. Alright. So for the pandan layer cake, you see this is a modern cake, but it's very different with the mousse cake. You see the ratio of the sponge is a lot. Because for this cake, right, is using a shoe sponge. So the texture of it, right, is very soft and very creamy sponge, very moist. So we can put a bit more. Then I cut it, I put it straight. So we have a pandan layer cake, 4 layers. In between we have a chantilly and the pandan cream mousse. This one, right, have to make sure you measure properly so they are even. Okay. Then on top of it, I have a pandan cream mousse. I pipe inside and the caramel sauce and cover with the coconut chantilly again. And on top decoration, I have the mango passion fruit confit. And this, right, I don't put everywhere because I don't want every bite I have this. This just once in a while you eat it, right, you have something refresh to clean your mouth. But I don't like every bite, right, I have the mango passion fruit confit because it's not the flavor I want to bring in. Original flavor I want to bring in is only the pandan and kaya. Okay? So after I eat, I want to have more color. That's why I put the mango confit. but then I don't want to don't have much flavor of it. Yes.
Why call shoe sponge? Why don't call pandan sponge?
But can because the method on doing it. Shoe sponge is the overall, like we have a jacon, we can have any flavor of jacon. So shoe sponge is the type of the sponge. It's usually used for the roll cake. Okay. But now I have the pandan flavor. I can call pandan sponge also. It's just up to me what I change. Because for a class, right, I don't want to change a classic name because so when I teach a class, the student when they heard about it, they roughly know what kind of sponge I'm making. Okay. So the next one, Paris Brest. So you see, I have a crispy base, brownie, chocolate cream milk, and cover with the chocolate chantilly and a little bit of caramel sauce to bring extra flavor, and also the small shell on top. Always remember, guys, for the Paris Brest, shelf life after you put inside a chiller is 1 day maximum. It's not going to be longer. Then blossom. This is the cake. Actually, Senzu and Blossom, right, is two of the cake which is very good selling in our online platform. But because Senzu, I have to change the design. Temporarily, we remove from the online shop. This is to Chinese New Year. There's a lot of customer request to change the decoration. But we don't do customize, so temporarily I remove it. But this cake is another cake which is very good selling. So you can see, I have a vanilla sponge, almond crispy. You can be alternate, you can switch, no problem. Then red fruit confit covered with vanilla mousse and vanilla chantilly. As you can see, this cake, I don't want it to be too high because for me, a good height of a cake, right, maximum is 6 cm. I don't like to have a cake higher than 6 cm because for the customer, when they want to eat, right, we are human, we are not snake. We cannot open our mouth to 10 cm. So always remember 6 cm is a good height. If possible, I would like to go for 5.5. Not higher than that. Then the next one, this one more straightforward, that's why I didn't put a diagram inside. It's just a creamy, it's just a creamy brownie. Make sure don't bake too much, otherwise it's going to be spongy. And also, on top of it, we have a crystallized walnut and also the ganache. So like this way, right, every bite you eat, right, even though you eat small bites, because inside we have a walnut on top of a walnut, we can really taste the walnut straight away. And last, the yuzu apple tart. So you can see we have a crust and we have a very moist. As you can see, almost close to unbaked, but actually it's baked already, guys. It's because the almond cream I use, right, have a lot of moisture inside and there's cream inside. So it's a little bit like Clafoutis. So you see here, you have a layer of the creamy sponge or almond cream. On top of it, we have a yuzu cream. So you have crispy, spongy, then creamy again, and also the apple and confit. So this apple, when you eat it, right, you have a soft texture, a bit like jelly. But the apple, when you taste it, is yuzu flavor. Okay? Of course, you can change to other flavor. So basically, this is the 6 types of product in this class. Any other question?
How about in the future? How long is it?
Any products before glazing, you can keep inside the freezer up to 1 month. Actually, up to 2 months, 3 months, no problem. But I don't like to keep more than 1 month. And in the online shop that I practice, right, I try to make sure that I do the quantity enough to sell in 2 weeks. So I make sure I have a very fresh product to serve. That it makes different with my products and other people. No more? Okay, guys. So that's all for the class. Then the editing team, right, are going to take the video and photo of the products. Then later you will see from our platform, online platform. Thank you very much. And any question you can check in our Upclass Chef online platform. Okay? Or if you want to text me, you can. But I cannot guarantee I will answer you. Okay? Thanks, guys. See you.